everybody. Welcome back to Taco Tuesday. Thank you, LeBron James, for making that a thing. Speaking of amazing people, we have Elizabeth back in the studio with us today. Woohoo!
Very happy to be back. Sorry I couldn't be here last week. Had some issues. But yeah, very happy to be back, and let's get going.
Yeah. All right. So you may have been wondering if you're, a real one for us. And we weren't on air last week. That was due to Reading Week. We had a lot of stuff going on at Reading Week. You may have noticed a lot of big sports events during Reading Week. So we're going to give you guys a little review of that because we think some of the events were quite important. Ella, do you want to take that
Sure,
one?
I'll start one. Okay, so for me, probably the most exciting sports moment for me over Reading Week was definitely the Toronto FC game on Saturday. They played DC United, and they were winning 1-0 until maybe the second minute of overtime. And then DC scored, so it was tied 1-1. And then they had to play a whole bunch of extra time. And in that extra time, the TFC managed to score another 4 goals. So they ended up winning by 5-1. It was really exciting. I haven't watched soccer in a really long time, to be honest. So it was just one of those games where, it was bringing me back to watching it, and it got me really excited to keep watching TFC. And they're going to go on to play New York. And, yeah, so it was a really fun game. And I don't know, did you guys watch any of it?
I didn't watch it, but I definitely got a lot of news from it on Twitter. That's always, it was so nice to see because just being, high performance, a former high performance athlete. And, the Americans just in Canadian sport are always our rivals, right? And in soccer, it's such a big deal. So yeah, go us.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch and to see, because they played at BMO, right? Which is here in Toronto. So it was just a crazy atmosphere, and I'm sure it was very similar to, obviously not the same scale as the Raptors game when they won, but still it's a big deal. They didn't win the championship or anything, but this was, I believe, FIFA qualifying, so it moves them up in the rankings, which is really exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really great to see Canadian.
Sorry, that was the US game. Yeah. Because they played, sorry, that's why I got confused. Continue.
It's really great to see Canada thrive, and it's always when they do good in hockey or basketball, it's great, but they're they have been good in that for a while, but then when they win something or have good results in some other sport, it's wow, that's great.
Soccer's definitely a less popular sport in Canada, so it's exciting. Yeah. What else happened? What did you guys watch this Reading Week?
It wasn't the weekend. It was weekend before Reading Week. So there was a gymnastics world championships that went on in Germany, and guess who won? Simone Biles, a shocker. But it was great to watch. It was really amazing, and actually, it's kind of sad because no one knew about it here, but a Canadian gymnast actually won 4th place. Ellie Black. She's from she's from Halifax, and she performed perfectly. She executed her routines, and it was really delighting to watch her, and to be 4th in a world championships. And she also qualified for the Olympic Games in Tokyo, which is pretty cool, I think. And she did very, very well. And yeah, it's kind of sad that no one knows about it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you follow it, because that's something I wouldn't have heard of at all until you said that, right? So that's cool. Awesome.
One other thing I thought was kind of a big deal. I don't remember if this happened over Reading Week or not, but the WNBA finals happened, and that was a really big deal, and the Washington Mystics won. But one thing that I found really interesting, I think this is more apparent to me just because, Toronto won the NBA championships last year, and there was a huge parade and everything, and that was a huge deal. But they're going to have a parade as well, and they've been like going everywhere, and I think that's super cool. And it really reminds me of, especially over the break, how Bianca Andreescu has been literally hitting up everywhere. Like she's like on
She's
tour,
amazing.
just going everywhere and spreading all this spirit about women in sport, basically, because it's so crazy. Like she did the puck drop with the Leafs and the Bruins. Like that's a huge deal, because first of all, like that's a huge game. Second of all, like there's a huge audience watching that, and you definitely know that like some of those people definitely watch the tennis, and a lot of the Bruins fans like maybe we're cheering for Serena Williams. Like that was just a huge deal for me, and I think especially because she's so young and she's showing like all this strength, and like she shows that people can rally around like such a young player, and that's.
Did you see the thing that was Bianca Andreescu's the opposite of the Drake curse? 'Cause every game she's been to, the team has won, including Saturday.
Yeah.
Which that's a good segue into what happened Saturday.
Totally.
So that was the Maple Leafs Bruins game, and obviously everyone knows that was a big rivalry.
We're a little bit salty.
just a bit.
A little.
But we
Like
ended
we
up
have a
winning
right to
anyway,
be.
so that was an exciting game. And then they play again tonight, I think, or tomorrow night, against the Boston Bruins, but this time in Boston. So that'll be cool to see where that goes to. Obviously not a women's sport, but
Still worth to mention.
You know
I
what?
mean.
We're for gender equity here, guys. We love we love men. If that works.
Why not?
So speaking of being, all for gender equity, October happens to be Women's History Month in Canada. So that's not like sports specific, that's just for women's history in general. But we wanted to take a look back at how the sport media industry has changed since the past. And, we're in the sport media program. One of the big differences that we see is that there's a lot more awareness, and one of the stats is that there's a lot more participation in women's sport. But the difference here is that even though there's a lot more participation in sport, and that's so great because it shows that like girls are being empowered and not afraid to like maybe step out of their comfort zone and try something that they mostly see boys doing. But the difference is that the coverage has not changed. So I think that's one thing that by looking at the past, we can try and change the future in that way.
I would say I agree, but like it has changed a little bit. Like even just the example of the Washington Mystics going on a parade. Like I don't think that would have happened even 5 years ago. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's a big deal, but yeah, you're right. It still isn't
where it needs to be.
Yeah, as equal as we'd like it to be, obviously, but
Yeah.
we're working on it.
And as like the History Month in Canada, I think a lot of our female Canadian athletes are making a huge difference, like Bianca Andreescu, as we mentioned, and Callie Humphreys.
Yes.
That's a big deal. Would anyone like to give the recap on the drama there?
If you want to go for it, do you have an article?
I don't
have one.
Do you want to pull up that article?
It's super long, so I'm just going to give a really, really short, brief summary. But basically, Kaylee Humphreys and Canada, the Canadian bobsled team, they didn't really call a truce or anything, but they definitely, that relationship is gone now, which I don't know if that's either a good thing or an unfortunate thing, but, so she said, "Today I don't know how to feel. While I am very happy this purgatory has ended after over a year of trying to get my concerns and the concerns of other athletes taken seriously, I'm also very sad to not compete under my flag any longer." So she's from Calgary, and she is now on the U.S. team. So she switched. I guess she asked to leave the Canadian bobsled team after there were all those sexual assault allegations, and then rumors that it was false, and all this stuff was going on. And I think it was probably just for the best for her and for the Canadian team to just sort of part ways.
I think so too. I know that she sued, and I'm not sure if she was successful in that, but she sued because she said that she wasn't able to do her best and she wasn't able to perform her best because of her coach, Stefan Bosch. I love that name, by the way. But she won gold Vancouver 2010, gold in Sochi 2014, and then bronze in Pyeongchang in 2018. Those were all 2 women bobsleighs. So what I'm wondering is that how does this affect her teammate?
Whose name is Felicia George.
Yeah, they've been teammates for a while, I believe. I remember watching a promo video where they were together, and just the teamwork and like the bond they had, it looked like something really special. So when I heard that she was, changing to the US, I'm like, okay, what's her teammate gonna do? Like,
how do you find another partner and
how does her partner find another partner?
Exactly.
And it's like this big dilemma. And I think this situation can be looked at from many different sides. I mean, some people may say Kelly Humphreys was being selfish and just was like, screw this team, I'm just gonna go compete for the US, like I'm done dealing with you. But on the other end, leaving her coach, leaving her teammate, all of that. But on the other hand, it's pretty sad that her team weren't willing to improve and take her seriously after she'd done so much for Canada and for Bobsleigh Canada.
I feel like it could have been more than just this one situation too. Like, I feel like maybe they had not a kind of sour relationship before this happened, because it feels like they kind of, obviously, as I said, she was fighting this for over a year, but it seems like they kind of just were like, okay, bye, we don't want to deal with this anymore. You know what I mean?
Super messy. Like, all I know is that Bobsleigh Canada did an investigation. She launched a private investigation. Like, there was just so much to this, and it got so messy. And like, I think when that happens, when you have such a high performing athlete like her who goes to the Olympics, like gets results, I think sometimes like that can create a bitterness, of course, because you want to establish trust between the association over you and like your coaches and your teammates and everything. And what I'm kind of wondering is that how are the Americans going to welcome her? Are they going to say, oh, nice, like you betrayed Canada, like welcome? Or are they going to say like, okay, how are we going to trust you? Or are they going to say like, you know what, your personal life is not a matter for us to discuss. We just want to see you perform as an athlete.
I hope it's that one.
I hope so too. I hope for her sake it is, because I think in a way, like honestly, being an athlete, like you're gonna come into contact with those coaches that are toxic, and those are never good for you. Like,
and I think that's always there. But then the better of an athlete you become, and the more you're in the public eye, then you have to deal with all the media attached with that. So sadly, she is. I mean, not sadly. Like, she is a very now common name, I would say, athlete, and then everything about her personal life is now going to start being like
and it was like you were saying about having a coach, and like they're there to push you, right? And her thing was a harassment complaint for verbal and mental abuse, which obviously is a valid form of abuse.
Oh, totally.
But at the same time, you're an athlete, and half of your job is mental and half of it is physical. Like, you have to be able to, obviously we don't know exactly what the coach was saying.
I was going to say, I think it's just the approach maybe the coach took.
Exactly.
There's a line. I mean, yes, the job of a coach is to push the athlete to be the best that they can be, but you can't pass them, like make them past that point of that breaking point, essentially. And I feel like it is hard for a coach to sometimes know where that line is and know, okay, like I think this athlete can be pushed a little harder. Meanwhile, no, they can't, and you don't. And then that is, I think, mostly not the athlete's fault, but as the athlete, like you have to say, like, okay, like I'm, like that's it, like stop pushing me, kind of thing, because they might not, your coach might not be able to read where you're at.
Yeah, I think it's also like hard to judge the situation because we don't know the whole truth, and we will never know the whole truth because, I mean, there were situations where athletes earn a name for themselves and then they're like, oh, actually, I'm unhappy with this coach now and I want more, or I want them to not push me as much because I have a name and all that stuff. So we actually don't know. Maybe it wasn't the coach's fault. Maybe she just started overreacting, which I respect her very much, but
it's hard to judge when you don't know everything.
You kind of have to look at the situation from different perspectives.
Yeah, but I know, like, Elizabeth, when you did gymnastics, and when I did figure skating, I mean, my figure skating coach was so sweet, but I know, like, if you guys have seen I, Tanya, figure skating, gymnastics, a lot of, like, the more art based sports have like very strict
they rely
coaches.
So heavily on perfection.
Yeah.
Which is like,
for sure.
Like in football, yes, there may be the perfect like spiral and the perfect pass and the perfect catch, but like there's a lot of different versions of the perfect catch, the perfect pass, the perfect like interception or whatever. But with figure skating and I feel like gymnastics, I mean, I don't know enough about it, but I feel like there's only really one way to do something perfectly.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is why it becomes that like so intense like atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. Like their coaches, I mean, my coach was intense, but when I went to competitions and like saw how the Russian gymnasts train, it was just insane because their coaches would literally hit them like with shoes and scream at them and like
at the same time it's a cultural thing, right?
Yeah, and like my coach like wasn't as intense, but like we had to go through that as well. Like from the early childhood, like we would get called like stupid and fat.
So yours was more
whatever.
like verbal.
Yeah, it was verbal. Like we got like slapped a couple times, but it wasn't like anything over the top or painful.
Still got slapped. That's what I mean. Here in Canada, if your coach slapped you, I'd be like, nope, bye.
And that's the thing. I feel like, I mean, it's not that I'm saying she's overreacting, but I mean,
it's a different place in time, right?
Yeah. And if that happened, like in Russia, coach would be like, "Are you kidding me?"
I think one of the things in this story that really stands out to me is her personality. Because her personality to me is very edgy, out there, like very like she's gonna do what she wants to do. And you know, you can tell that like she kind of challenges the social norms in a way, like if that makes sense. And because one of the things that I was thinking is that, you know, her personality is huge and it's a big part of why she has fought so hard for this, why she's fought so hard for what she wants. And I think that comes hand in hand with the sport as well, because it's also like quite a niche sport. It's quite an intense sport. It's a dangerous sport. And that for me has a huge part in this story because like she's gonna go for it, and she just shows like no mercy when she's going off with these allegations. She's not holding back, and I think that is important to the culture and to the media because it teaches people that, okay, if you are being called stupid, if you're being slapped, like do something about it. Like you can show your coach that, okay, like listen, like this isn't okay. Like there's other ways to approach it, and like maybe getting slapped works for some people, but it's also just totally inappropriate in other ways. And I think there was definitely a disagreement between her and her coach. Like I don't know their personal situation, but I'm just looking through like some quotes and stuff that she has, and her coach is German, and that's a very different culture than Canadian.
Exactly.
It's totally possible. And you know, especially when you get into a fight and there's bitterness, like people, it's almost like they stick with their side even more. Like the more you disagree with them, the more they stick with their side. So I think it totally escalated, and I think it was a little bit blown out of proportion in the end because it was made such a big deal. But I'm happy for her, and I hope that it inspires other female athletes to kind of take a stand. And, you know, if something is going wrong or if something is completely wrong, that they take a stand for it, which is totally, like, wasn't there a huge deal with a bunch of, like, this one gymnastics coach in the States?
Yeah, Larry Nassar.
Where he
and they all
molested.
Spoke out in, like, over 250
girls, but that's so different. Like, I don't think that can be comparable because that was actually, like, sexual harassment, and that wasn't a coach, that was a doctor who literally just sexually molested a bunch of gymnasts, and including Simone Biles actually. And she said, in an interview she said how upsetting that was and all of that stuff. But I don't think that can really be compared to this case, because here it's just like verbal abuse rather than sexual abuse, and I think there's a huge difference in that.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I don't think it's comparable, but it definitely raises the point of speaking up.
For sure, yeah.
But since it is Women's History Month, do you guys have like I know we've talked about it like last season on the show, but do you guys have a female athlete that stands out to you? Is there one that you like looked up to since you were like a kid playing sports, or even if it's someone in like the industry?
I feel like I could just steal a more common one, Christine St. Clair.
We probably all were gonna say her anyways.
Being a soccer, like someone that's like loves soccer, I always used to look up to Ronaldo, and then all of a sudden I saw her play like on TV, and I was like, whoa, like who is she? And it was all of a sudden like now I had this more because she's a female and I'm a female, like I had this all of a sudden more relatable athlete to look up to. And she's incredible, and she seems super sweet, super passionate. When you hear her talk about like controversial things, she like sticks to her viewpoint, which I think is super important to be in the media, like especially being a girl, being confident really, really helps. So I stole her, but I genuinely think she's a good one and deserves to be recognized.
Yeah. Also, I feel like someone who hasn't been in the media as much lately, but Penny Alexiak.
Totally.
I mean, you can kind of put her into a whole category of like Bianca Andreescu, Penny Alexiak, all those girls who are like our age and have reached such crazy heights.
Well, they're going to be the new, like for younger generations, people to look up to. Like, which she seems like a good one. So
and I would probably put Jessie Fleming in that category too, just because. I mean, she's a little bit older. She's probably 22 now. Still, like, I'm just thinking all these young athletes that really motivate us even, like, and especially younger girls, right? Yeah. I mean, you've seen, like, I'm sure you've seen all the signs and stuff of, even I'm just thinking of actual, like, Jessie Fleming, like, going to a game, seeing, like, the little 6-year-olds who come with their whole team and they all have the signs. It's, like, it's so cute.
It is really cute.
Yeah. So I think that group or that generation of female athletes is really inspiring to me.
I know, I'm so excited to see like
where it goes.
I'm so excited because like oh gosh, they're I think because media is not going anywhere, so they're only going to be more in the public eye. But so far all of them seem like really solid women, so like I'm just excited to see like the change they make in sports. Like I'm glad I'm my age so I get to see all that.
I hope they stay healthy and there's no drama like Callie.
Who else? I mean, obviously, did you guys hear about Olivia Howe? I think it's Howe. She's the first woman to ever be named to a WHL team's coaching staff. Which, I mean, it's WHL. It's not the NHL, but still, it's she's a coaching assistant with the Moose Jaw Warriors. And the WHL is part of Canada's highest level of junior hockey, which is obviously it's a step up there, closer to the NHL. Well, like, she has a lot of experience too. That's the thing, right? Like I find when there are these women going into industries like that, they have like a plethora of experience, and it's so impressive. Like she's only 25, first of all.
Oh wow!
But she played NCAA hockey at Clarkson University in New York from, I think, 4 years, from 2012 to 2016, and she won a national championship. So I think that's really cool to see someone on the coaching side of it. Yeah. Because we don't really see that as much. But
also to kind of go off of that, as you said about female coaches, there was the NFL, actually. This was a really long time ago, but I just thought I would bring it up.
Why not?
So the Arizona Cardinals hired the first female coach in NFL history, and everyone heard about it, Jennifer Walter. Yeah. So I think I thought I'd just bring that up based off of you said. Yeah. This was in like 2016, but
definitely
whatever.
Well, like not too long ago, I think it was in like September of this year. The new NHL, the Seattle team. They don't know like the official name or whatever, but Seattle's creating an NHL team. I think it's coming out for the 2021-2022 season. They hired their first female pro scout. Her name's Cami Granado, I think that's how you say it. She was the captain of the U.S. Olympic team. She won gold medals. She is in the Hockey Hall of Fame, so she definitely knows her stuff. And to see a female, because yes, we don't see females in the coaching positions for like male teams, like very rarely. There's only a few, but to see her in like the more statistical side of like that scouting and like that's crazy because usually girls aren't put in that, oh, they know the numbers category. And I know we've like recently talked about that in our program, just like the difference of like the fan types and like just
Laurel, are you
Shout out.
and just like you usually don't think of females, of women when you think of that like statistical fan group. So just to see her being in the NHL, which is like a pretty big franchise, and then being like a pro scout on an NHL team is crazy.
Yeah, and I think it's also like in our program, I think there's now 76 people in total, I think, and we still have all 17 girls made it from first year. So I think 6 boys dropped out, which isn't that many. I know. Well, it seems like a lot, but like then when you think about how big the program is, you're like, okay, that's probably, they expect that, right?
I don't think they like.
no
Some of them
idea,
also didn't drop out. Like they just started like a career that they were more
or they
interested
did something
in.
else.
Like,
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But
They are
you
no
can-
longer with us, but we miss them.
Yes.
You can
But-
just see like that. Oh, I don't want to do this, and
Yeah.
which is normal.
Yeah.
But I was just saying, I think it would be interesting to see, since we're talking about more the business side of sports with female in it, I'd be interested to see what the ratios are in a sport business program. Like I know there's one, like the sport management one at Brock. Ryerson just came out with I think it's a 1-year program after you do, it's kind of like a graduate, but it's only 1 year for sport
Humber
business.
also has.
Humber
sport
has one.
management.
So I'd be interested to see like what the ratios are there compared to the media side of it, because I feel like we
I'm not
think we're
gonna
a
lie,
minority, but I feel like in business it's even a
Yeah.
bigger
I didn't
minority?
think I was gonna
I don't know.
like the business as much, and it is super confusing, but I can see the intrigue in it.
Yeah.
So like just taking our marketing class this time, I'm like, I could see like why our professor's a female and she's a super like strong, powerful female and knows her shit
out.
about that stuff. So like, yeah, shout out to her. But I could see like her passion in it, and
Yeah.
I could see like I can understand that completely.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Yeah.
I think for girls, especially like in our industry, when we show our passion for it, it's really empowering, and like it shows other girls that like, oh my god, like I could do this.
Yeah.
But it also, I think it scares away other people. Like I think it sometimes, not that it's purposeful, like it sends the wrong message. Like it makes us seem like dramatic or something, and that's not our fault at all. That's just like the way that it's perceived, the way that society has been taught to perceive it and whatever. But I think one thing that girls in our industry are really changing is the perception of how we deal with things. So we had our film, our multicam class yesterday, and one of the shows was like a Mario Kart.
I saw,
good.
like,
A Mario
picture of
Kart
that.
highlight, which
insane.
was dope. That was so cool. Such a unique idea. And I liked it because it was kind of neutral. Like, it's not like they were covering women's sports or men's sports. They were covering kind of like
Something
this,
everyone can
Yeah.
like
relate
this
to.
fantasy sport
Yeah.
kind of thing. And the hosts were
That's
both
awesome.
girls. And it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I think, and everyone in that room, like the atmosphere of that room was just crazy supportive, and
Yeah.
it was something different. And honestly, like that class totally made a difference in my mind, because even though it's just one class, I think a lot of people learned a lot of things, and I think a lot of people kind of got a different vibe from that when they saw that like it's a bunch of girls putting on this show. And there's definitely, I think, how many girls are there in our class? Like 6?
Yeah,
There's 6 girls out of
5
like,
girls in my class too.
yeah,
There's like 3 girls in my class.
it's a 25 person class, and just showing how strong the female presence was in that room and how everyone was there to support it, it really shows that like there is a change coming in our generation. There is a change coming in like there's a change coming in our program, in our industry.
Yeah.
And I think being there to help that as a girl and staying true to who you are, like Callie Humphreys or Simone Biles or whoever, like that just shows that like there's so much change coming. And the tricky thing is that
But can I add something when you're done?
go for it.
Or no? I was just going to add on to multicam. It's not always even in front of the camera. Like this week we had 2 really, really strong female hosts. But even the first week when we did our 5-minute show, and there were 4 groups, and I think 3 of the 4 groups had a female producer and a female director.
Yeah.
And they all went really well. Like, I'm not being like, oh, we did well just because we were girls. Like,
No,
no,
yeah,
they
but-
were strong, and they
We had
took the
legit
lead,
feedback
right?
from
Yeah.
legit profs that told
Our
us
class
that,
is
you
like
know,
yeah,
did really
super
well.
like our prof specifically. We all have I think have different profs.
Yeah.
Want us to each try new positions and don't want us to like find one spot and be like, okay, I like it, I'm not gonna stay. So I think that helps in like you're getting everyone to try every position, but I agree, like every time like there's like a one of the women in like the director role, the producer role, it's almost weird to see and weird to think of.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, oh damn, like it is possible, and they did a really good job.
Yeah.
Like it's cool, it's inspiring. And I don't think people realize how much of an, like I don't think the guys realize how much of an impact like small stuff like that has on us when we actually
They
see
have no idea.
one of us being represented in a different, like in a way that they're not usually represented. But I think it makes it impacts me. I'm like, damn, go
no,
girl.
that's a good point, because I feel like like what we were just saying, like with the two hosts.
Yeah, well,
I don't think the guys were like, oh, like, cool.
I don't think
but
they were
I'm there.
intentionally being like, girl power.
Yeah.
They were kind of just like, okay, whatever. Meanwhile, we were like, this
Wow.
is so unusual.
Yeah,
This
when
is
I
amazing.
saw that
like,
there were 2 female hosts, I was like, well, who
Yeah.
let this happen?
Yeah, exactly. You're kind of like, yeah, which I think it's just an awareness thing. And I think when you're one of the people being represented in that way, it impacts you, obviously, but that's why it needs to keep happening, because you don't know who you're impacting and who you're benefiting, right?
Yeah.
So just being aware of your actions and like what you're doing and the goods and the bads of it.
I think obviously like we're looking at this on a very small scale. Like this is just our Ryerson Sport Media class. Sport Media, first of all, is a tiny program, and just Toronto Ryerson is a small like microbiome. I don't know what to call it, but
Niche.
I think like if we look at us and then we kind of expand on that, there's definitely so many more women in the industry than I see from watching sports when I was younger. When I was younger, I didn't even notice if there were any women. And now when I watch TV, I'm like, oh my God, like at least one of the hosts or the analysts or like the interviewer, a lot of times I see it's like some pretty girl that's like an interviewer, but like they're super smart too. Yeah. And that's something that I'm noticing a lot more in the industry.
Yeah, something I think like change definitely occurred drastically, because now I don't think because before I think when industries hired hosts or commentators or whatever, there was that bias that men, but now I don't think that's the deal now, because I was watching the TSN's Central Sportscast, and both hosts were female, and they did a great job. And like you see female commentators and analysts and all of that stuff. So I don't think there is that bias anymore. I think if you know your stuff and you're smart and you know what you're doing, I think it doesn't really matter anymore if you're male or female. I mean, of course, incidents occur, and I'm sure there are still people with those old views who are like, oh.
I think that's what it is. I think it's just like that old mentality and just lack of education or lack of awareness. Maybe not education, but awareness.
No, I definitely agree with that, but I'm just putting a question out there. I want to see what you guys think.
Dun, dun, dun.
Do you find, I want to make sure I word this properly too. Yeah. So like you said, Elizabeth, that it's more so just a woman or a man could be on camera as long as they know what they're talking about. But do you find that they do portray a woman on camera a certain way? And do you find that they do that to sort of give them a personality? Because I almost find sometimes watching the men, I'm just like, oh, you're a middle-aged white man who used to play hockey. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas the women, I mean, I don't want to generalize or anything, but I feel like most of the women that are on camera just have experience in sport media, not in actual sports, if that makes sense. Do you find that there is a way that they portray women differently, or do you think it's just they genuinely just pick people based on their education?
I think that question is different if you look at different news outlets. I think if you're looking at like CBC or things like that, like they're taking past Olympians, stuff like that, to co-host and things like that. But those are on more of their seasonal shows, like when they're doing the Olympics or covering the X Games or something like that. But I think if you look more at like football coverage or something like that, they're definitely, because there's such a huge audience, I think they definitely do portray a woman more for her looks, or
I think I think like if you look at it, and this all goes back for me to coverage, like what sports you're covering. When you're covering an NHL men's hockey team, people watching it want to know the people that are talking to them about it. And I think like from Sportsnet or TSN, like those big sports franchises, I think the way they're doing it is, let's get a retired or someone that could be common name and common like face to talk about this sport so that people feel like more inclined to watch and that they trust this person and they have some sort of a history with this person. That's why I think for men's sports, that a lot of the times they'll get like retired or like former people in the industry to be the hosts. And because they're not covering women's sports, the women that they get aren't, like, to your point, necessarily former players of that sport. They're just kind of people that know what's going on and what they're talking about. So I think for me, when like you're talking about the main like football, anything men's, literally anything men's, when they're getting the people to be that face of that show or that segment or that highlight pack, they want it to be someone that like when watching you're like, oh, I know that person, they used to play on this team. Like my dad always says that. He's like, oh, that guy used to be the blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah. Like, so I think when you people want that because then you're more inclined to watch.
I was just looking up some history here, and I find it really interesting because Phyllis George in 1971 won the Miss America pageant, and then she was invited onto CBS to join the network as a sportscaster in 1974. So it used to be based on looks, but then after that, a year after that, she was promoted to the cast of NFL Today, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But then when she went on to just be I take out that word, to be the host of the CBS Morning News, an African-American woman, Jane Kennedy, took over for her, which is a huge deal because she became the first African-American female sports network host, which is huge. But then that lasted for 3 years until she became like the first African-American celebrity actress to grace the cover of a Playboy magazine. So I think if we're tying this back into like Women's History Month, a lot has changed since then, where women are definitely more respected, but there's definitely like that background motive, I guess, that gets me.
Also, to touch on that, I think that women, it's not necessarily because of their looks. Maybe it used to be, I think, more on their looks.
Like it definitely used to be.
But now it's not necessarily like how their face looks. Like, is it pretty or not? I think it's about how they deliver the news. Like about their gestures on camera or.
You want to watch someone who's good at talking.
Yeah, who's good at talking, who's presentable. Like, a person can be the prettiest person in the world, but they're just going to talk really bad.
And be super boring. And
you're not going to want to watch them, right?
Yeah.
So I think now it's more about your presentation, your delivery. Like, of course, you have to know what you're talking about, but yeah, I think before it used to be more about looks, and now it's more about that kind of atmosphere and delivery.
I think it's totally about perception too, because I remember in class we were learning about how people perceive, like, do they trust the information that women are giving out over the information that men are giving out? Like, if men are giving the sportscast, will more people remember what they're saying, like go into depth about it?
I think for to a certain extent it comes down to who it is. And sadly, back to my other point, we don't know as many women, so I think that it just becomes less not important, but impactful. Like if Sidney Crosby was telling me something and like, I don't know, and like another, like just a not random, but just a female sportscaster was telling me something, I'd probably listen to Sidney Crosby because I'm like, oh my God, like I love him. I watched him growing up. So I think if they try to get females that like play in the sport or just like really known in the sport to commentate, then I think it would be a lot more impactful.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, and going back to, I think both Natasha and you, Emma, said the word trust. I was just thinking of the this summer's FIFA World Cup panel. The hosts were so cool. So it was Kate Biernass, who like everyone knows, right?
Yeah.
Diana Matheson, who she should have been playing with the Team Canada, but then she had an injury. So she had scored the bronze medal winning goal at the 2012 Olympic Games and won bronze at the 2016. So she definitely knows what she's talking about.
Yeah,
then
I
there
love
was
that
Claire
panel.
Rustad too, who was a two-time Canadian.
And I think like as teams got eliminated, players from the teams would start like hopping on and like rotating through.
I thought that was really cool, and I think that's something that you don't really see that much anymore. And like this whole, like with the FIFA Women's World Cup panel, like the whole on-air talent, there were 4 girls and then there were 2 men, I believe. But they weren't like the main panel. The main panel was all female, and I think that was a really good like marketing tool, I guess you could say,
and it was
for
all
them.
women in the sport.
Exactly.
Like, and people that when you watch it, you're like, I know them. And I feel like that's such a big, that's a big thing for me when I turn it on and I'm like, oh, like I trust this person. Or you've watched it for a long enough time and you already know like the people that are on, like if you that on at that time and you're like, oh yes, I trust this person.
A familiar face. Yeah.
Also, like you gave as an example Kate Burness, who everyone knows obviously, and she was never like a professional athlete. She was a basketball player in university, but you know, obviously no one knows about that. And I think people trust her because she's
so good at her job.
Yeah, she just delivers perfection, and she really, like, when she talks you believe her because she just has that tone to her. So I think if you're good at what you do, if you're really, really good, it doesn't matter if you were, you know, in the NBA or not.
Yeah, people will trust you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. But, I mean, I think it's definitely going in a better direction. And like we were saying, just seeing it in class, like you said, it's a really small scale. But I think seeing a woman taking the lead in class is obviously the first step. And I find in our program a lot of times, like in TV Lab the other day, we had a supply teacher, I guess, would you call him that? I don't know. Sounds like elementary school.
Sounds like elementary school, but
he
a substitute.
There you go.
Still sounds weird too, but anyways.
He said, can every group send 2 people up to the stage, or 1 person, sorry, and I'm going to ask you like questions on the chapters of the textbook we had to read. And I was like, man, I haven't read the textbook in like 3 weeks, but I'll go up just because like, why not, right? And then it was me and Alex were the only girls up there, but Alex ended up winning an $8 Tim Hortons card. So
with the concussion.
Exactly.
You get
She's a
Tim
concussion
Hortons
currently.
cards?
it was your prof. I don't know why. He was like, I found it on the ground, so you can have it. We were like,
he never gave us a Tim Hortons card. No, we have Sykes.
Oh no, then it was Jeff Mathis.
He's the M4. We got a bag of chocolate.
It's fine.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
All right,
That's
so
pretty good
lesson here is we like rewards.
But I'll still do work as long as I get recognized. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it's nice to have recognition.
Tim Hortons not bad either.
Actually, wait, that's totally a good point. Recognition makes such a difference.
Yeah.
Because if I'm doing my job or whatever, like in class or something, and I'm doing it and it's fine, but then once you receive a little bit of recognition from a prof or anyone or just like
literally anyone, I could just hear like the smallest good job and I'm like, oh my god, thank you so much.
Like it makes a huge difference. And
especially because like a lot of the times I have no clue what I'm doing, or it's a position I'm just got put into and I'm like, what the heck's happening? So like just to hear like someone be like, oh, that was nice, I'm like, okay, I actually know what's happening.
I did it right.
I did something right. Yeah.
And when like I noticed this in class yesterday, when I would congratulate like the girls, they would be like, oh my god, like thank you, like I didn't think it was good, like, and they're not just being like, oh, it wasn't good, like you're
fishing for compliments.
Yeah, it was actually like very genuine and very surprising. So that's something that definitely in history, like I think, yeah, we are competing, but like I don't even see it like that. Like we're all competing for the same thing. We're competing to like get all of us up there.
Yeah.
But also there's kind of a difference when I get recognition from like a girl. I'm like, oh my god, like thank you. And then when I get recognition from like a dude or something, I'm like, oh, okay. Cool,
thanks,
like
wow.
thank you, like impressive, because then it's like, oh, you actually paid attention. Like you paid attention.
That's what's kind of sad. It's like we're not expecting it.
Yeah, you're not expecting a dude to come up to you and be like, oh yeah, like nice job,
good job. Yeah,
because then it would mean that like they actually listened.
Yeah.
Any guys in sport media listening right now, take the hint.
Because I'll say it. If someone did something good, I'm like, damn, good job. Or like, oh my god, that was amazing.
It doesn't
like,
matter the gender, right?
I am just super open in class about like just good job. Oh, good job. Or like thank you. Sometimes like when people save your butt, you're like, oh my god, thank you so much.
Thank God.
I feel like it also depends
so just
on the
being
people.
vocal. Yeah,
that's true.
Of
That's
course.
true.
I mean, there are some
like more quiet people.
Some quiet people, but some people.
But even
I
then,
don't know. I have experiences where guys were like, oh, good job. Like I don't feel like not everyone is like not paying attention all the time. There are people like that, but I mean,
we all have those days.
something else that I noticed this year in class is that we have like a lot of group projects. We can kind of like wrap it up with this.
Yep.
I find, not to like call anyone out in my group or anything, but I find
know what you're gonna say.
that
Hell yeah.
I'm always doing all the work.
Yeah.
And then at first I was kind of
Ella's
cheesed
group,
and I was
shout
like, no, they're doing great.
Step it up.
No, I find that I'm always kind of cheesed because I'm like, why am I doing all the work? And then like they just assume like, oh, like we did so good, and I'm like, I did so good. I did all of that, right?
Yeah.
But I'm finding this semester, I don't care if I have to do all the work if it puts me in a better light in a like professional standpoint, like for the prof. If the prof sees me in a better light because I did all the work, then I don't care if I have to do all the work. If that makes sense.
I totally know what you mean. Yeah.
And I think it's because we're getting closer.
Again.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm willing to put in that extra work if I get recognized for it.
Yeah.
But if it's like I'm doing all the work and then he's like, or she's like, good job, everybody, it's kind of like, was it really everybody?
That's what peer reviews are for, you know?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
That's your chance
Very
to be
true.
like,
Definitely, like, over the break.
Roast everyone.
Oh, heck, we're ready. Over the break, we had, like, one of our assignments due. And, you know, it's reading week. A lot of people forget about assignments, and that's fine. But this was so stressful because it was literally a day and a half before class, before it's due, and everyone's like partying, whatever, because it's a Saturday night. And I get a text from the only other group mate that's female in my group, and she's like, bro, I'm stressing about this, like, we're not ready, like, no one has their shit together, like, nothing is together. And she's like, this is stressing me out, like, I have a midterm to study for, like, this is not ideal. And I'm like, you know what, yeah, why, my question is, why was she the only one to come up to me with that comment? And why did she come to me? You know,
And
she
not the
came to
other
the
member.
other female.
Yeah.
She didn't go to another male. She didn't text the group chat and say, hey, guys, like, we need to get our crap together.
I was going to say, do you guys have a group chat? Because sometimes, like, that's where...
Yeah. And I think the problem is because, like, I'm not saying, like, girls do this too. Girls totally ignore the group chat and whatever. But I'm just saying, like, in group projects, a lot of the time, it seems like the girls do, like, huddle together and do a lot of the work. And a lot of the times, the boys huddle together and do a lot of work. Like, it's totally different, depends on the group. But... oh my God! Hopefully,
I feel like we could talk for a full hour about this kind of thing.
we could, but we have like
5 hours.
1 minute left. So hopefully, you know, in the future, especially in the next 2 years of sport media,
2.5
learns. Oh yeah, 2.5.
Yeah, don't go too fast.
I'm not skipping
more
over,
than
you
a
know?
half.
Hopefully, you know, learning how to work better in groups happens, but I hope that in the industry it's not like that. I hope in the industry it's a lot more, or if it's the opposite, that would be even worse, if it was all the guys doing the work and not letting the girls do the work.
Yeah, I feel like we're good though, and I think we're definitely heading in the right direction.
Totally.
But thank you guys for tuning in, and
Thank
we will be
you.
back